The ocean chemistry is like nothing this Earth has seen before, as far as we know, in terms of the rate of change. And certainly not like what our civilizations over the last 1,000 years have seen. So there's increased uncertainty with regards to the conditions. And what that means is that it's way harder to plan as a fisher, as a shellfish farmer, as a resource manager, as a fisheries manager, because the patterns are unpredictable. When you monitor, you begin to identify patterns. And it's through that pattern identification that you can reach a state of stability. So the example that Bill gave us this morning, it's only through the monitoring that they're able to do with the percolators, with these other systems, that they've reached a state of stability within their industry. So this is why we go back to monitoring so often. So I want to describe some of the general approaches to adaptation. You can modify the growing environment. This is something that we heard about. So first of all, hatcheries, you need a place to modify. You can't modify the wild seed very easily, so having a hatchery in the first place provides that place. And then manipulating the water chemistry within that controlled environment. Management strategies. So this can be monitoring, so continuous monitoring so that you can create forecasts. In the Pacific Northwest, there's basically like a forecast or a report card, if you will, projecting when the high acidification events will occur based on upwelling, and then the hatcheries can make management decisions based on that. Selective siting of farms. We talked about whether seagrass beds can become refugia, basically, for shellfish aquaculture. So can you selectively site your farms based on where there's limited upwelling or limited nutrient runoff or what have you. And then fisheries management that takes into account species vulnerability. If there are particular species that are experiencing stress because of ocean acidification, factoring that into your fisheries management policies. And then alternative livelihoods and financing. The reality is that there are a number of species that are going to be negatively affected. So how do we reduce the damage this has on communities and economies? Can we identify other jobs that are available within the region? Can we diversify? There's kind of new ideas around alternative financing models. So for example, we're going to talk about financing for blue carbon, so carbon sinks and financing that can be brought through that. There's some work to try ensuring reefs. Mark can talk to you more about that. So these are some of the adaptation techniques. But there are significant challenges and barriers to these techniques. So the first one, the picture there is from Thailand. That's a clam farmer who works in the middle of the night when the low tide was, when I was there, and he hand dredges the mud flats, right? He relies on wild seed to populate this mud flat, and then he uses a steel cage and pulls it up. Very limited technology. He doesn't have access to a hatchery. He doesn't have access to any monitoring of any kind to tell him what's going on in that area. So there's huge amounts of barriers to someone like that being able to do that. No hatchery and no equipment to do the monitoring and the modification. Management strategies. Again, no monitoring exists in many, many regions, so you don't have anything to base your management strategy off of that's locally informed. And then also we have limited data with regards to specific species vulnerability. And so there's a constant need, like Chris was saying, it's only been about 20 years since we started doing these biological experiments. There's only so many species that have been studied, and there's huge variability in terms of response. So there's a huge need, especially within regions like the Caribbean, where there hasn't been as much research before, to study local species and understand local species response. And then alternative livelihoods and financing, often that's impossible or very difficult because these most vulnerable communities are in remote places, perhaps that there is not many other industries that are available for diversification. So that's one of the challenges. There are also approaches that you can take to mitigating the problem. Of course, first and foremost, reduction of global carbon inputs, so a transition away from fossil fuels at a global scale. We talked about this, though. There are local carbon inputs, nutrient runoff. There are things that are happening locally that you can reduce. And then sequestration through blue carbon. So mangrove, salt marsh, seagrass all sequester and store carbon in the sediment. They do so at slightly different rates and in slightly different ecosystems, but this is a way to not only create what might be a local halo, if you will, but it also assists with the global picture. The only way we're going to reach some of our goals with regards to atmospheric CO2 is not only to reduce our emissions, but also to create more sinks. And blue carbon is one of those ways to do that. And I would suggest that you speak more with Kirsten if you want to know more about kind of the current status of blue carbon activities. Okay, and so what are the barriers to mitigation? Political, of course, right? With reduction of global carbon inputs, the fossil fuel interests remain vested in national and international politics, and many of the highest polluting nations are refusing to cut their emissions. Reduction of local carbon inputs. Some regulation schemes make it difficult or impossible to regulate non-point source pollution. So if your main concern is agriculture, it can be very challenging to even have a law created to manage that nutrient runoff. It's something we encountered in Washington State, trying to look at nutrient runoff and management. And even if you can get that regulation in place, it's difficult to monitor. It's expensive to monitor and enforce that. So that's one of the other challenges with regards to nutrient runoff. And then blue carbon, we're already having these resources disappear because of climate change, coastal development, pollution. So we're losing, for example, seagrasses at 8% a year worldwide. So that's already, we're up against that barrier. And then secondly, we have limited capacity around the world in terms of people who are trained to conduct high-quality restorations that are going to be successful. So with that, there are a few needs. One of those is global action from a political perspective. And we can work to achieve that by creating national and international policy frameworks and coalitions. With regards to the technology, if we can reduce the cost and improve accessibility of this technology, we enable more communities to utilize some of the techniques that we've heard about today. And more research and modeling. We really lack clarity in terms of species vulnerability and adaptation approaches. For example, some of the blue carbon techniques may have been tested in temperate ecosystems, but not tropical, or vice versa. And so there's a lot of knowledge gaps we have as to what are the best uses of these mitigation techniques, and there's a lot of species that we don't understand. So with that, what are some of the opportunities that we have in front of us right now? With the SDG 14.3 methodology, we have an international framework for this issue that has been agreed upon globally, and we'll hear a lot more about that, I think, on Wednesday. The Go On in a Box kit, so this is what I've talked about offhand, but it's one example of a lower cost set of equipment. Go On stands for the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, and this kit was developed by a number of scientific partners and the Ocean Foundation, Andrew Dixon at Scripps, Chris Devine at University of Hawaii, IAEA, IOC, many, many partners. And you'll see examples of this later this week, but we attempted to lower the cost of monitoring by adapting some of the methodologies. International research efforts. I want to highlight one in particular that is just beginning. The IAEA, the Intergovernmental International Atomic Energy Agency, actually holds the Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center, and they facilitate global research efforts, including a new project to basically run the same biological experiment all around the world to get more information about species vulnerability. So it's not that you're going to use the same conditions, it's that you're going to use the same general design and approach. So if you want to know more about that, for example, that's a project that's just starting. It's led by Sam DuPont, I believe, is the primary scientist leading it. But again, we can give you more information on that. That should help us fill some of these gaps with regards to species vulnerability. And then another example of the opportunities is groups such as the Ocean Foundation, IOC, IAEA, GOAN, LAUCA, etc. We are trying to run trainings to help increase the abilities of various communities to do some of this work. And so this is a very short presentation meant to really just plant some seeds of some ideas. We'll be spending a lot more time with this throughout the next few days. But we have a couple of minutes for questions if anybody has them. Can you run the mic if anyone has a question? The mics are over here.
Okay, thank you for that overview. I just wonder, we always come back to this question of the political will and, the policymakers. I'm not disrespecting any policymaker here, but if you look at what has happened with the Paris Agreement and the climate change, that whole climate change thing, it is very difficult to, I'm wondering how are we going to overcome that challenge, because it's very difficult to, at the political level, to get buy-in from the politicians, where some don't even believe that climate change is happening. Are there strategies? Is it that we just bring them to more of these meetings, or how do we get them? Because I think that's always the barrier. The scientists are working hard to get the information, and then we reach that level. How do we get them to change their view?
There's a lot of strategies, and I might want to let some other people in the audience answer, but just quickly, one thing that I think has been really successful is small island developing states banding together and being a large voice. So coalitions, basically. So coalitions of people who get it, who are on the same page, who can push an agenda. Something that's being explored is the ocean pathway through the UNFCCC process. So Kirsten and Mark can talk more about this, but the idea that there needs to be an explicit ocean component to the climate accord and these agreements, and how can we ensure that ocean issues are being taken seriously, and that is being led by Fiji and Sweden, I believe, and I know that Mark has consulted with Fiji on this. Kirsten's very involved in all of this. So maybe Kirsten, if you want to add.
I'm coming back to your point. I think one thing is really you have to repeat and repeat and repeat, because policymakers or people working in the ministries and so on are changing, governments are changing.
Y obviamente los gobiernos cambian, ahora las administraciones cambian constantemente. Y cuando usted encuentra a una persona, mantenga ese contacto. Sí, obviamente es más fácil en los pequeños estados insulares y en los países más pequeños hay una comunicación directa entre los científicos y algunos legisladores o hacedores de política. Cuando es un país más grande, obviamente ya el proceso es mucho más complicado.
But a hero in that regard is Carol Kelly, and she just said, I just repeat and repeat and repeat.
Pues me han dicho que lo que hacen es repetir como un disco rayado.
Then as well with the UNFCCC,
lo mismo con el Acuerdo de París y la CCC de las Naciones Unidas. Hay, procesos de adaptación, pero parece que no había espacio en estas contribuciones determinadas. Entonces, pero yo sí creo que hay una manera de incluir las medidas de adaptación. Siempre están hablando sobre mitigación, pero realmente nunca hablan sobre la adaptación, que es uno de los temas que hay que tener en cuenta. Ya ahora hay espacio para esto, para ver cómo tratan de cumplir con el Acuerdo de París. Todo esto fue logrado en el COP de este año. Y aunque no ha sido el más grande, pero sí ha sido uno muy importante en términos de resultados. Y, tenemos el vínculo entre los objetivos de desarrollo del milenio y los políticos, por lo menos ahí consideraron el océano como algo importante, así que ese camino, ese pathway hacia el océano es algo muy importante, pueden trabajar de la mano en esto. Y claro está, tienen que comprometerse y también está en la parte de las Naciones Unidas que fue incluido en el COP21, entonces haya la oportunidad para poder mejorar la comunicación y poder mejorar la utilización de los hallazgos científicos. La idea es que es una comunicación de doble vía. Porque los científicos a veces están como perdidos en el espacio, considerando que saben qué es lo que quieren investigar, pero a veces les gustaría tener mayores directrices de parte de los legisladores. De lo contrario van a decir, no, eso es inútil, pero pues les han debido informar con anterioridad. Para hacer seguimiento en esto,
what I tried to do by showing the examples of vulnerabilities is also talk about what type of science can really get to policymakers, because they're tasked with economic security of the country and well-being of people. So anything that addresses those things is more likely to get attention. And so finding linkages between your research and these topics. The other thing is something that the Ocean Foundation has done in the United States is it's kind of like Kirsten said, you find that one person and you stick with them. We worked state by state and we identified champions at the state level and we coached them and we helped them draft legislation that they ended up passing. But we call them champions because basically they became really invested in this issue. They decided it was their issue that they wanted to work on. We gave them information with regards to the science, but also we helped with the legal drafting. And so if you find somebody within your government who's interested, first of all, tell us and we want to help. Second of all, that's a really valuable resource.
Ese es un recurso extremadamente valioso.
Okay,
gracias.
And we're actually going to transition into a panel.
Vamos a pasar a un panel ahora.
So, may I invite my panelists up? Kirsten, Cesar, Meredith, Martin. Okay, welcome. I guess this is our first panel in the plenary room. And the purpose of this panel is to make sure everyone's aware of the existing mechanisms we have to address ocean acidification scientifically, politically, etc. And so all of the panelists here with me today play a role in some of these groups and mechanisms. So I'm going to start by asking some introductory questions. Kirsten, in your role at IOC, you have a global view of international efforts on ocean and carbon issues, including ocean acidification. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role and how your office works to coordinate and guide international efforts?
Thank you very much, and I already spoke a little bit. Yes, I'm Kirsten from the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, and I just have a few slides because I think it's easier to grasp a few things when you also have it visualized. So at the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, so let me start. There are a lot of international and sectorial and regional policies out there, policy bodies which are addressing ocean acidification or should address ocean acidification, or for which it is relevant, where there are certain mechanisms in place. And I'm always talking from the very scientific point of view. I'm working at the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, and we have a mandate in ocean science, and within UNESCO, UNESCO as well is the only body in the UN system with an S for science, and within E for education, so capacity building as well as really deep in
la creación de
what we
capacidad,
are doing.
un aprendizaje profundo, lo que
We
estamos
have
haciendo. Y
149
tenemos
member states,
149 Estados miembros
I think all
en la
of you
Comisión Oceanográfica
are
Intergubernamental.
citizens of
Tenemos
our member states. So it's
los ciudadanos de nuestros Estados
and they
miembros
direct our
que
program, and they also
dirigen
said
nuestro
to us,
programa y
to
también nos
IOC,
dicen
we
le
wanted
dicen
to
a la
address
COI,
and that
queremos que
you increase the
progresen y que
capacity and the
aumenten la
knowledge on
capacidad y el
ocean
conocimiento con respecto a la
and actually on
acidificación del
ocean carbon we
océano.
work since the 70s.
Está
So there's
trabajando
quite
desde los
some
años
history,
70, tenemos ya
in
bastante
our shop.
historia en nuestro haber,
But when you look at the
pero cuando
capacity where
observamos la
countries actually have,
capacidad
if they
de
know
los
about
países
ocean and
si
climate,
conocen sobre clima y acidificación,
so this is just from a report
esto
we
es de un
published,
informe que
especially here in the
publicamos,
Caribbean as well.
especialmente en el
There's not
Caribe.
so
Realmente no
much knowledge
hay
out
tanto
there in terms
conocimiento
of ocean and climate, or
en
not so much
a la
science.
parte de
I
la
don't think
ciencia
that
del
there's a lot of
océano.
knowledge already
Yo
there,
creo
but
que
it's
ya
not
hay
published, it's
conocimiento,
not
pero
in
no está
peer-reviewed
publicado, no hay
literature,
revisión de
so that's
pares
pretty
de la
difficult to be
literatura, así que es
overseen
muy
by the
difícil
global
que lo vea
community, and
la
this is something
comunidad
what we try
global,
to
y esto es algo que nosotros
enhance.
tratamos de mejorar.
And so one
Entonces,
way of doing
una
that
forma
is
de
now
hacerlo
getting those
es
key points,
organizando esos
what we
puntos
would like to address
claves,
and
lo
what
que nos
we as the scientific
gustaría hacer y
community,
lo
but
que nosotros, la
engaged with the
comunidad
policy and
científica
with the industry,
comprometida con la
think is
industria
important
y
for the
con los
next decade to
legisladores,
solve.
miramos que es importante para la próxima década.
And therefore
Y por lo tanto,
the UN
entonces,
agreed now
las Naciones Unidas acordaron ahora
to establish a UN decade
establecer
of ocean science for
un
sustainable
indicador
development.
para
It's
el
not for ocean
desarrollo
science itself, and
sostenible, no
IOC is a
solamente para la
coordinating body
ciencia,
for
la
the
COI está
preparatory phase.
excelente coordinador
And
para
we
este
invite
trabajo, y
you
nosotros
all to
invitamos
really
a todos
participate here
ustedes
in those
a que
regional
los que quieran
consultations,
participar
and
dentro
maybe
de
Cesar can
la
say
parte regional, de
knows
pronto
when the
César puede
one
hablar
here
un
in
poco
the
sobre esto,
Caribbean will take place,
cuando
but
vamos a tener
it will
reunión en
take
el
place
Caribe. Esto
definitely
se
in
va a dar
2019,
en el
so that you really
2019,
say
de
what
manera
are
que
the key
ustedes puedan ver
factors here in the
cuáles son los
region to
factores
be
claves en la
investigated
región
in
que
terms of
deben ser
ocean acidification,
investigados
also in
con
the broader
respecto a la
perspective of the multiple
acidificación del
stressor
océano.
approach. And so
Entonces,
regional bodies out there, and
Tenemos
we at
entes
IOC,
regionales,
especially with ocean acidification, are
vemos
also
aquí la
supporting them.
COI, la parte de la acidificación del
So
océano.
there are just a few where we also
Aquí hay
contribute,
algunos
and one
con los que
of the latest
contribuimos
good development is, for example, as well
para el buen
the Nairobi
desarrollo.
Convention
La
also came to
convención de
IOC and said,
Nairobi
we want to
también fue
help
donde
to
la
establish a
a
program
la COI para
in the
decir,
Western
bueno,
Indian
queremos
Ocean.
establecer
So there
un
is
programa,
a
entonces
strong
hay
communication
una
between
fuerte
the
comunicación
policy,
entre
science,
la
interface
política, la
happening at
ciencia,
IOC,
esa
and we are trying to
interfase que se da
facilitate
en la
that, and
COI,
we
estamos
rely
tratando de
on you as
facilitar y
scientists
confiar
as
en
well
los
to provide us with
científicos
the best
también para
information
que
possible
tengamos
so
la
that we
mejor
can try to
información
communicate
posible para
that to
tratar de
our
comunicarles
149
eso
member
a los
states. We do
149
that with regular
miembros.
reporting, for
Esto lo
example.
hacemos
But that reporting to the
y
member
le
states is one
reportamos
side,
a los Estados miembros.
and
Eso
another
es
side
una
is then
parte,
being
una
really
cara de la
active in
moneda.
those,
La otra es
in those networks like Goa
las
On,
redes
and I know
como la
this will
Goa
be addressed
On,
later. But our main role in
pero
ocean
nuestro
acidification is
papel
now
en la
in the
acidificación del
SDG
océano
14, so in
es
the 2030
en
Agenda for
la
Sustainable
agenda
Development,
para el desarrollo sostenible
and
en
I will talk a lot
2030,
about that on
y vamos a
Wednesday.
hablar sobre el
But
objetivo
to just
14,
give you a brief
vida submarina, y para
overview,
darles
we
una
are
visión
the
breve,
custodian agency, so
tenemos
we
la
are
agencia
responsible
custodio,
for the
nosotros somos
reporting
responsables
of that
de
indicator,
informar sobre ese
and we
indicador,
developed with
y nosotros
a lot of
desarrollamos
good scientists
con buenos
methodology,
científicos una
and
metodología
so this can be now
de
applied
manera que
and
esto
should
se
be,
pueda
and
aplicar,
it was agreed by
y
member
esto
states
fue acordado por los Estados
to
miembros,
apply that.
aplicar
We are
esa
trying to enforce
tecnología.
that, and
Tratamos de hacer cumplir
that's
con
where
esto,
a lot of my activities
y
actually
muchas de mis
rely on
actividades
to get
confían
that
en
methodology out,
conseguir
to
hacer que
increase the
esa
capacity for
metodología,
that.
que se
And I
aumente
hope to
la
work much
capacidad,
more
y espero poder trabajar
in the
mucho
upcoming
más
year as well
en los
here in the
próximos
region
años aquí en la
and
región con
in the rest of the
ustedes
world.
y en el
And,
resto del
but for
mundo.
that as well,
Para
for the
ello,
scientists
también para los científicos,
to apply that,
necesitamos
and
aplicar
also
esa
to-
metodología, y también
because this is in theory my last.
eh,
So just think about maybe also for the later
pensemos,
discussion.
de pronto estas
Do
preguntas
you
pueden
actually
ser
know
para la
about the
discusión
SDG 14
posterior.
before you came here?
¿Conocen
Do you know
ustedes
your
ese objetivo de
country
desarrollo
focal
de
point for
milenio
that
número
2030
14?
agenda
¿Conoce
so
su
that you
punto
can communicate
focal
your
de manera
science
que
to
se
that?
pueda
Because they need those
comunicar
data,
con
but
ellos?
they
Porque
might
ellos
most
necesitan
probably
esos
don't know
datos.
that you exist and measure
Ellos
it because they are
necesitan
statisticians.
saber que usted
So that's really something where
sabe
I hope
sobre
I
eso y
can
se comunica.
facilitate
Espero que pueda yo
also
facilitarles
with my work
también
here that
con mi
I
trabajo
at least
aquí,
point you to your IOC focal point,
el
who's our
punto
direct focal
focal de
point for
COI,
that,
nuestro punto
collecting
para
that
recopilar
information,
toda esa
and so that we
información,
can really
de manera que
create
realmente
a
podamos
good
crear
scientific
un
knowledge
buen
base
conocimiento
for ocean
científico
acidification here in the
para
region and
la
globally,
acidificación
so
del
that
océano
this
aquí en esta región y a
white
nivel
space
global,
and all those
donde
models
tenemos
and
espacio
for the
con todos
Caribbean is
estos
disappearing and
modelos
also
para el
gets a color.
Caribe. Yo creo que
Thanks,
esto sería
Kirsten.
todo.
I think
Muchas gracias,
the point
Kirsten.
about
Yo
any
creo que el
questions you
punto
have
sobre
regarding
alguna
SDG
pregunta que tengan
14,
sobre
and Kirsten's very interested in learning more.
el
These questions
objetivo
are
número
really
14.
important questions,
Estos son
so I
preguntas
hope
muy
you have a chance to
importantes.
talk about
Espero
that.
que podamos tener oportunidad de
Cesar,
hablar de eso.
you serve
César,
as the director of
usted
IO
como
Caribe.
director de IO Caribe,
How does your role differ
¿cómo
from Kirsten,
difiere su
and what
papel
can you
del de
tell us about
Kirsten?
IO
¿Puede
Caribe's
comentarnos
involvement
sobre
in regional
la
efforts
participación
to
de IO
study
Caribe y
and
los
address ocean
esfuerzos
acidification?
de manejar la acidificación del
Thank
océano?
you.
Muchas gracias.
Well, the
Bueno,
Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of
la
UNESCO
Comisión de la
has
UNESCO,
three
la COI,
subcommissions
tiene tres
in order to cover the
subcomisiones
entire planet and the
para,
entire ocean.
cubrir todo el
So,
océano y todo el planeta.
countries, member states, you,
Los
you have
Estados
decided
miembros
we would like to have a more
que nos
regional
les
approach in
gustaría
order to
tener un enfoque regional con
suit
el fin de
our
poder
needs. And
satisfacer
even
nuestras
though we have
necesidades, y
in
aunque
IOC,
nosotros
in our
tenemos en la
assembly,
COI,
you
en
member
nuestra
states decided
asamblea, los
to
Estados
have
miembros
take the
decidieron
decision globally.
tomar la
The way
decisión a
how
nivel
we
global.
approach
La forma como
the
nosotros
development and
abordamos
implementation
el
of those
desarrollo y la
decisions is via
implementación de esas
the regional
decisiones
subcommissions.
es
So we
las
have
son las
WestPac in the West
subcomisiones.
Pacific
Tenemos la WestPac
region.
en la
We
región
have
del
IOC
Sur
Africa
Pacífico, tenemos la COI
for the
África
African
para
coastal
el continente
countries and
africano,
islands.
y las
And we have
islas,
IO
y
Caribe,
tenemos
is
IO
the oldest
Caribe,
subcommission that
que es la subcomisión más
IOC has
antigua
established in,
que
in
tiene
this
la
region
COI, que ha
that
establecido en esta
has
región,
36 member
que
states
tiene 36
and
Estados
19
miembros
territories.
y
So all of you are members of the Caribe, and excluding our the countries that we are working with, but that they don't have the jurisdiction of the Caribe. The major point is that we are not differing. Our role is not different. We are working for our member states, and our approach is that the regional subcommission is providing the local, the regional and view of how it needs to be implemented. In other words, if we look at the science, ocean science capacity in this region, we have one of the major challenges we have in this region is that we have an asymmetrical development of the critical mass. You have in this region, only for the sake of example, we have 780 programs in ocean sciences provided by universities and in the region. From those 780 programs, Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, and PhD programs, 70% of those programs are located in 5 countries of 36. Yep. So you, even though more than the entire Americas, including the Caribbean. So that gives you a sense of what are the needs and the critical mass in this region. So how is the contribution of the IOC, not only for the ocean acidification development and analysis, but as well as in general, our mandate to improve and enhance the capacity of member states in ocean sciences and knowledge is via those subcommissions and networking and facilitating the access to top-notch science to those member states who doesn't have the capacity to deal and face their, and implement and fulfill their commitments. So that is the major difference.
Yeah, and that actually addresses something that we were talking about in the chemistry session earlier about, you know, how can you work together when one country has more capacity than another to maybe establish regional hubs of monitoring, regional hubs of analysis. So it sounds like IO Caribe would be well suited to help kind of assist in facilitating some of these types of things. Meredith, you serve as a member of the GOON Secretariat. GOON stands for the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network. Can you tell us more about the history of GOON and how it supports ocean acidification research?
Sure. My name is Meredith Kurz. I sit at the U.S. NOAA Ocean Acidification Program, but I am here in my capacity as a staff member for the Secretariat of GOON. So this was before my time, but I am told by folks that were at the Ocean OBS 09 conference. Ocean OBS is an ocean observing conference that happens once every 10 years. There was one in 09 where many scientists got together and said there is a need for global coordination among ocean acidification researchers. This is a rapidly growing field, and this is an opportunity for us to set standards and promote coordination as this field grows. And so the GOON network launched itself at 2 initial workshops in 2012 in Seattle, thank you. Nice. In Seattle in the US, and the second one was in 2013 in St. Andrews in the UK. And at these workshops, the attendees defined 3 goals that GOON pursues. The first one is to improve our understanding of the progress or the changes that are occurring in the chemistry of the ocean. The second one is to improve our understanding of the biological impacts species and ecosystems. And the third one is to gather and spread the knowledge and techniques that are needed to appropriately model ocean acidification, which can be the most challenging steps. The first 2 sort of need to be fulfilled before you can progress successfully to that level. So you mentioned the Secretariat. The GOON structure has an executive council, which has a rotating membership of experts in the field and our important UN partners, such as Kirsten at the IOC and the Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center,
un centro de
and
certificación de
the
acidificación del océano a
Secretariat
nivel
consists of
internacional.
3
La
staff
Secretaría
members, which have
tiene
very
3
much been able to
miembros
enhance our
que
efforts.
pueden mejorar
And
nuestros
so
esfuerzos.
Go On
Entonces, Goa On
provides a number
nos
of
suministra una
opportunities
serie
for
de
collaboration,
oportunidades de
and one of the things
colaboración.
that has been there
Y
since
una
the
de las
beginning
cosas que ha
is
estado
a
desde el
data portal.
principio es un portal
Well,
de
it's not a
datos.
data portal yet,
No es
but
un
that's the
portal de
goal.
datos
It's more of
todavía,
a
pero
data
ese es el
representation.
objetivo. Es una
It's
representación de
if you've never
datos.
been there before,
Si
I
nunca han
highly encourage you to
entrado
go
ahí,
to the
quiero que por
website.
favor entren
The
al
data
sitio
portal
web.
is a
El
map
portal
of
de
all of
datos
the
es un mapa de
buoys,
todas las
moorings, and
boyas,
cruise tracks that we know
amarres,
about that are
y que
self-reported by
conocemos
Go
que
On
son
members.
reportados por
And
miembros de Goa.
ideally, it will have
Idealmente
direct
va a
links to
tener
data
links
in addition
directos
to
con
metadata
datos,
that is coming from
además
all
de
of these buoys,
metadatos que
moorings, and
salen
cruise
de
tracks.
todas estas boyas.
So the Go On
Y
maintains
entonces,
that
Goa
information.
On mantiene
It
esa
also
información.
heavily invests
También
time
invierte
in
tiempo
capacity building
en la
with our partners,
capacitación,
the Ocean Foundation and
por
the
ejemplo,
IOC and the
con nuestros
OAICC.
socios Ocean
Because
Foundation,
you can't meet those 3 goals
porque no se pueden
if there
cumplir
isn't
con
global
estos 3
participation and
objetivos si no
global
hay una
capacity to observe
participación
ocean
global
acidification.
con respecto a la acidificación del océano.
Alexis mentioned earlier
Nosotros-
today to some
Alexis
people in the room
mencionó
that
que hay
Go
unas
On also
personas
has
para
a
que
program
Goa
called
On
peer-to-peer.
también tiene un programa que
Peer
se
as
llama
in where you
par a
park your
par,
boat, and
donde,
peer as in your friend, peer-to-peer.
de muelle a
And that
amigo,
is a scientific mentorship
par.
program that
Esto es un programa de
matches senior
mentoría
researchers in the field
que
with
hace que se
early career
reúnan,
scientists and
científicos
particularly
en
scientists
principios
that may
de su
not have as many
carrera y
resources at this
científicos que no
time,
tienen tantos
so that
recursos,
they can coordinate
de
and build
manera que
capacity
puedan
on a one-on-one
coordinar
personal relationship
en una
sort of
relación
level.
uno a uno.
So
Entonces,
there are a lot of other things that I
hay
could talk
muchas
about with
otras
Go On.
cosas
There
de
are
las que
regional
puedo
hubs
hablar
of Go
sobre
On
los
that
hubs
form in a
regionales de
grassroots
Goa
way,
On.
meaning that scientists in
Nosotros
regions
tenemos
get
científicos
together
en las regiones
and
que
form
se
these groups
reúnen y
themselves
forman
so that
estos
they can
grupos
define the
de
priorities
manera
of
que
their
puedan
own
definir
region,
las
since we can't really
prioridades de su
hand that
propia
down to them
región
from the
porque no
global
lo
level.
podemos manejar desde nivel
We'll talk
global.
more about that.
Y vamos a hablar un poco más adelante sobre
And
eso. Y
I would like to end by
yo
saying that
quisiera
Go On
concluir
has
diciendo que
grown
Goa
so much
On
in the last
ha
7
crecido
years-ish
tanto en los
since it was
últimos
founded.
años desde
It
que
now
fue
has over
fundado.
500
Ahora
members
tiene
from
más de
almost 80
500
countries.
miembros de 80
So it's a
países.
very
Entonces
exciting
es
effort in
un
my
esfuerzo
opinion.
bastante
Yeah, a
interesante, en mi
couple notes
opinión.
there. We will have a
Tomen
sign-up
notas allí,
sheet
tenemos
going
una
around
hoja
to
que
join
está
Go On,
pasando para que
and you can
participen
indicate
en
whether you would
Go
like to
On.
join the
Ahí
peer-to-peer
indiquen a ver si
network as
quieren
well.
participar en eso.
And so we
Y
can help
de manera que
facilitate that.
podamos
One other
facilitar
resource
esto.
that's
Otro
linked
recurso
somewhat to
que
Go
se
On,
vincula
it
con
was
Goa On,
established by one
fue
of the
establecido
regional
por uno de
monitoring
los,
networks in the United States.
monitoreos que
It's
funcionan
called
en
the
los Estados
OA
Unidos.
Info
Se trabaja,
Exchange, and
eso,
all of this
digamos, el
information is
intercambio,
highlighted
toda
on
esta
your thumb
información que
drives.
aparece aquí
There's a
en
file that's
sus,
called something like
eh,
resources or
USBs,
links,
vemos
and it has a link to Go
cómo
On,
se
it has a
ha
link to all these different
vinculado,
things, it has a
cómo
link to
vemos las
Lauca,
distintas
which you'll hear about.
cosas
The
que
OA
ustedes
Info
han
Exchange is a
escuchado,
forum
y esto es como un
designed for
foro
people interested in
diseñado
OA, so
para
scientists, but
personas
also
interesadas
shellfish
en
industry,
científicos y
fisheries
también para
industry, policy,
la
and it's basically a
industria.
way to have
Y es
targeted
una manera de
conversations.
tener
It started in the
conversaciones.
US, but it pretty
Comenzó en los
rapidly grew
Estados
to
Unidos, pero
include colleagues from
rápidamente
around the
incluyó
world, and we
colegas de otras
encourage
partes del mundo y
you to
queremos
sign up
alentarles
so you
a
can have
ustedes a que
conversations.
firmen
But
y
one of
para
the
que puedan
most
tener conversaciones.
critical
Pero uno de
groups in
los
this region
grupos
is
críticos en
Lauca,
esta región
and Martin
es
is
Lauca.
co-chair of Lauca, and so you're essentially a
así que
regional
esencialmente
representative of Go On.
el
And can you tell us
representante
about when
de
Lauca
Go On.
began and
¿Cómo
what are some of
comenzó Lauca?
the
¿Le puede
core
comentar?
goals and activities,
¿Cuáles
as
son
well
las
as how people here
actividades
can become
aquí?
involved?
¿Y cómo se pueden involucrar?
You want me to do in English? or
¿Quiere
Spanish?
hacerlo en inglés o
Español.
quiere que
Whatever
lo
they
haga en
want.
inglés o en español?
Well, depends on the people. Me gustaría comentarles
I would
que
like to
después
tell
de la
you
reunión
that
de
after
Washington que
the
mencionaba
Washington meeting
Alexis
that was
del
mentioned
Goa
by
On,
Alexis of
nos
Goa
inspiró
On,
el
we
reunirnos
were
como
inspired
latinoamericanos.
to get together as Latin
Al final
Americans.
de nuestra
At the
sensación
end
fue
of
que era
our
tan amplio,
meeting, we thought it
porque
was
ese es,
so
el Goa On
wide.
es
The
mundial,
Goa
como lo
On
mencionaban
is
en
global,
las diapositivas.
as they were
Son todos los
saying in
países
the
del mundo.
slides. It's all the
Y
countries of the
sentíamos al
world.
final
And we
que
were feeling
necesitábamos,
at the end
en
that
función de
we,
nuestra cultura,
based on our
limitaciones
culture,
administrativas, política latinoamericana, limitaciones económicas, limitaciones de instrumentación, había la necesidad de reunirnos. Detectamos también que había habilidades dentro de ese contexto. Había habilidades que podíamos compartir. Entonces, la OCA nace en ese contexto, una aceptación de nuestras limitaciones como latinoamericanos, la necesidad de agruparnos por la misma parte local, y la ventaja de alguna manera que veíamos nosotros es que sentíamos que había países que tenían, no todo, como lo hemos visto en estas sesiones, que no hay un país en Latinoamérica que maneje las dos cosas, la parte biológica y la parte química, que podíamos compartirla. Tuvimos un primer taller en Dichato, financiado por el Departamento de Energía, y de ahí fuimos creciendo. En realidad empezamos 4 países, después brincamos a 8, después a 11, después a 13. Y ahorita esperamos crecer más. He estado platicando de uno por uno con ustedes. Platiqué un poquito con Jamaica, con Belice. Vamos empezando ese primer día. Pretendo platicar con el resto de los grupos de los diferentes países para invitarlos. En realidad es aprovechar las capacidades que tenemos como latinoamericanos, conociendo nuestras limitaciones también, porque es interesante esta parte. Los países que tienen de alguna manera el financiamiento y que no tienen la limitación, tratamos de buscar nuestras habilidades y de alguna manera el ingenio para cubrir esas limitaciones. Ejemplos de limitaciones tenemos los estándares certificados de los que vamos a hablar mañana, limitaciones con la parte de instrumentación, limitaciones en la parte de infraestructura para sostener el equipo, porque como países le batallamos para conseguir los recursos, como países latinoamericanos le batallamos para comprar el equipo. Y le batallamos cuando ya lo tenemos, se descompone y tenemos limitaciones también para ello. Entonces, la idea es, ¿cómo le hacemos para esto? Entonces, ahorita yo me preguntaban, aquí las chicas de mi izquierda, ¿cómo nos comunicamos? Yo les mencionaba que es interesante porque después de los talleres se han hecho redes de WhatsApp latinoamericanos, y cuando alguien tiene problemas con un CTD, con un sensor de CIFET, inmediatamente le pregunta, oye, ustedes tienen uno, ¿cómo le están haciendo? ¿Cómo lo calibran? ¿Cómo lo reparan? Y se pasan la información. Entonces, esto ha sido muy conveniente como cultura local. Después de los talleres, ahorita ya se han hecho 3, se han hecho 2 de acidificación, específicamente financiados por IAEA, otro más en la parte del Caribe específicamente. Llevamos 3, esperamos seguir creciendo con eso y seguir aprendiendo con esto. Esto que nosotros, que yo les platico, le hemos compartido los inconvenientes, los retos, y son cosas que ellos están muy abiertos a percibir estos detalles que nos limitan para crecer como grupo, ¿no? Entonces, básicamente así es como se ha crecido. Vamos a tener una happy hour en la OCA, en donde nos apoya gratamente el equipo de Ocean Foundation, y yo la verdad que les agradezco mucho esta oportunidad, porque en realidad ellos están muy comprometidos con esta parte de la acidificación. La verdad que yo admiro mucho esa parte, la gestión que han hecho con Mark y su gran equipo, y la verdad que somos afortunados de estar en este momento juntos trabajando con esta parte. Entonces, en este taller de la OCA vamos a poder seguir platicando, compartir. Varios de ustedes trajeron sus pósters también, algunos más no lo tenían planeado, pero trabajaron duro de última hora, entonces lo van a compartir también, y vamos a estar abiertos. Ahorita tenemos todos los correos de ustedes que están aquí presentes, y lo que van a hacer es pasarme la información, incorporar. La idea una es los investigadores compartiendo la información en relación a las necesidades y las capacidades que tienen, y abrir la comunicación para necesidades que puedan tener. 2, intercambiar estudiantes. Ahorita nos mencionaban algunos ejemplos. En Latinoamérica también tenemos de repente instituciones de cada país que podemos hacer intercambios también. Podemos aprovechar esa parte. Yo he estado comentando con algunos de ustedes también. Entonces tenemos la parte técnica, la parte de estudiantes y la parte de profesores. Entonces hay que aprovecharlos. Básicamente, la OCA somos el grupo latinoamericano. No es Martín al rato cambia, en 2 años va a haber otra persona. La OCA está realmente la base, la plataforma, somos los que estamos integrando esta preocupación de la acidificación.
Yeah, and you can see these are all of the regional networks. Some are, is the Arctic one formal? No, some of these are not yet made, but we hope they will be. But for example, the Pacific Islands one actually just launched in August with a workshop that the Ocean Foundation and Go On led together. And so these networks not only serve to share information, as Martin said, but also to inform the global agenda. It's really important that it's not just researchers from North America and Europe making these decisions about quality standards and, you know, global objectives. I think it's very important that there's representation from every part of the world. And so part of these regional hubs is representation on the Executive Council of Go On to ensure that every voice is being heard from different regions.
I just want to add this part because this division is really new, right? The hubs are new. And Mexico's part of the hubs of North America too. And then I think it's clear that we need to divide, right, the information by regions to be more increase the capacity.
Yeah, so a big question we have to answer this week is, do we need more? I mean, can we do Lauca, but does there need to be a sub-Lauca in the Caribbean or in the Atlantic, or is it, you know, what are the ways that we can best share information? In North America, so you have the brand new North American hub, but before that you had NANUS in the Pacific Northwest of the US and NICAN in the Northeast and all of these other hubs that were created. So there's many models, but I think that leads to a question I want to ask everyone on this panel, which is, given the various organizations you represent and the roles you play, what are some of the gaps right now with regards to coordination within the Latin America Caribbean region?
Bueno, the gaps, yo diría ahorita, o mencionar algo al respecto, que es la parte de instrumentación no se mantiene sola. Yo pensaría en esa figura de mejorar la capacidad de formación de electrónicos marinos. En Latinoamérica yo creo que es algo que falta. Nos entregan un instrumento, se puede decir que nos lo facilitan para que lo tengamos, y cuando se descompone no sabemos qué hacer. And it's very expensive to send to United States or to Europe.
That's something that we've thought about as well with the kits is, you know, I was at PMEL in Seattle working with one of our partners before a workshop in Mauritius, and I was watching her like fix one tiny little part on the ISAMI, and I said to her, where's that screwdriver? What kind of screwdriver is that? Where's that rubber band? Where's this? Where's that? And she said, you know what? It's always been just down the hall. I've never thought about it. And I said, well, we have to think about it because this doesn't exist in Tuvalu, where we were sending a kit, in Tokelau. So what screwdrivers, literally, what screwdrivers do we need to provide? What tiny little nuts and bolts, what little pieces of plastic tubing and O-rings and grease and all of these things so that we can, even if there's not high technical capacity to fix some of the more detailed electronics, the little things so that it's not just like, oh my gosh, we have this broken sensor. We have to send it back to California or something.
I think that if we are talking about gaps, evidently we are in the, I would say, in the phase one of the development of the network. Even though we have gone so many members already, that this is a sine qua non condition. Yeah, yes. So, and we have a very interesting solution that LAOCA is presenting as one of the ways to improve the capacity inside the regions is by recognizing that we have the particularities about how we work, how we best can use our skills in order to improve our own capacity. That is an interesting model, and this is precisely what I was mentioning about the different subcommissions that the IOC do have. Here, I would say about there is definitely two elements in any network that we are willing to establish. And I will take the example that we at in IOC have been have been facing when we are developing the tsunami and other coastal hazard networks, warning systems. The first problem that we had when we established that network is that the cost of installation of the stations was somehow cheap. Yeah? So we could convince a series of countries to put the money there, and we buy and install a series of network stations, monitoring stations around. I take only the tsunami and other coastal hazards in the Caribbean. But we face two elements. We have the equipment. We have all the software that IOC has developed on the models, etc., with other partners. However, first of all, we in some countries we lack the human capacity. Second, and it's classic for any network development or in any project, is that you always have money for meetings and you always have money for purchasing some equipment. But you never have money for maintenance of the equipment and spare parts, and you always forget about communication. Yeah? So you don't have money there. So we need to be careful when we are discussing the development of the network. In our planning, we need to take that. And the other major element that was a lack is if anything's happened to one of the stations, we need to call our guy in Hawaii to come down here, and only the ticket is $5,000 US. So it's extremely expensive. It's not economically viable. So what we did is that we trained the trainers. First of all, we asked all the institutions that are members of the network and responsible for monitoring to provide 2 people as technicians, and we in electronics and in installation of that. So only when we train those people, and now it's very cheap to have. If anything happened in one of the islands in the Eastern Caribbean, we can send somebody from Mexico or from Colombia, or we can deal directly by phone and help the people. So in a summary, when we are talking about the development, and I will add that in general, from the point of view of transferring the necessary knowledge and skill for maintaining the network is one area. The second is what will be needed for improving the knowledge about ocean acidification. And I will add another element. If we are really willing to help countries to invest in ocean acidification research and understanding, it will be necessary as well we think about how that will how we can send the message, wrap the message.
Yeah. I think, again, that draws on the value of regional hubs and even like sub-regional expertise and hubs in terms of we don't want to have to send things back to Hawaii or bring someone from Hawaii. We want people here who feel comfortable, who have the resources that they need to be able to do some of these things. I have a question, again, for everyone with regards to how do policymakers and members of the marine industries fit into this? How can they become involved in regional and international networks and coordination efforts? Is there a role in LAUCA for ministries, or does there need to be, is there a different body? Do we need an affinity group? I mean, what's the best way to involve non-scientists in some of these capacities?
I think for that you need good products. You need something first that speaks, and something which I just wanted to respond actually to your first question as well, that there's also a gap of
porque sabemos que hay una brecha también de datos
storage and data quality
de
assurance to actually
almacenamiento y
produce regional
aseguramiento de
products which are
calidad
speaking to somebody like
cuando
maps.
se le habla a alguien
For
como
example.
mapas,
So I
por
think
ejemplo.
that's something
Yo creo que esto es algo que,
you can, I mean, I'm also coming, as I said before, from a very
como le dije, yo vengo
scientific
de
perspective
una
from
perspectiva
our organization,
científica de
and we
una
are,
organización
if at all, in the
científica
science policy
y
interface.
tenemos
But
esa
I think
interfase, pero
it's,
yo creo que
that when you attract them,
cuando
when you
uno
have good
los
products,
atrae y
they
tiene
also get
personas,
aware of it, and then it's also
es
for them to make
importante
a
para
step, and
ellos
it's always very easy. They have to make a step in our
tomar el
direction,
paso,
but I think
dar el
using
paso, pero
those
utilizar también
focal points,
esos
using
puntos
those
focales,
opportunities as well to speak
utilizar
to the
las
general public
oportunidades para hablar con
when
el
there are
público en
some
general,
possibilities to speak at
cuando
the
haya
radio or
posibilidades de
whatever. And I
hablar
know
en el
that in America,
radio.
for example, there are also some examples where
Hay
students,
algunos
for
ejemplos
example,
con
then were
estudiantes
invited to speak
que
in
están
radio
invitados a
stations, and so
hablar,
getting a little bit more out to the public,
sacar un poco
to
más
spread
hacia
the
el
word.
público para
But first of
realmente
all, for the scientists
repandir
here as
el
well, is
mensaje.
really providing the good
Es
science
importante
and
dar
sound
ese
science
tiempo
to
desde
their
afuera
bosses and to
a
their
los jefes y a
research
los
ministries,
ministerios de
officially
investigación
but it's very
oficialmente,
dependent
pero
on the
depende
structure is so
mucho
different
en la estructura. La
in every
estructura
country
es
here
tan
as well, so that there's
diferente
definitely
y
not one model which
definitivamente
fits all.
no hay una sola
so I think
medida
that
o una sola
for the
talla para todos,
Caribbean,
pero
that's
yo
one
creo que para el
outline,
Caribe y
because
para
the organization of where research sits
la organización
different
donde
ministries
esté y
is
los
very
distintos ministerios, esto varía mucho.
I want to, well, Bill already
Quisiera
addressed some
Bill
examples
ya
in the
habló
United
sobre
States
algunos ejemplos
of
de los Estados
human
Unidos,
infrastructure that has been built to
la infraestructura
allow
humana que ha
industry
sido
people,
construida para
government
permitirle
people,
a la gente,
social
la gente del
scientists,
gobierno,
and chemists and biologists to all be in the
químicos,
same room.
biólogos, que todos estén en la misma
And
sala.
I wanted to bring up
Y
another
quería
example
presentar
that
otro
we have in the
ejemplo que
US that
tenemos
has
en los
become
Estados
very
Unidos,
successful.
que se ha
We have
convertido en
coastal
algo muy
acidification
exitoso.
networks,
Tenemos unas redes
and
de
they're different than all these other
acidificación
networks that we're
costeras,
talking
son
about
diferentes de
in the
las
sense
otras
that
redes
they
que hemos mencionado,
consider
porque
industry
estos consideran
representatives
los
and
representantes de la industria,
government folks as equal
gente
participants.
de
The
gobierno,
goal of these
y el
networks
objetivo de estas
is
redes
to ensure
es
that there is open
asegurarse que
communication
haya
in
comunicación
all
abierta
directions.
en todas las
I think there is a
direcciones.
tendency
Yo creo
among
que hay una
us, in the
tendencia entre
scientists
nosotros, los
especially, to
científicos,
say, well, how
de
can I get
decir,
my
bueno,
message
¿cómo
to
puedo transmitir mi
policymakers or to
mensaje a
industry
los
people?
legisladores
But
o a
they
la
don't
gente de
think,
la industria?
what
Pero ellos
message
no piensan
might
en cuál
industry people or
qué
government
mensaje
folks
la
have
gente de
for
la
me?
industria tiene para mí.
So for example, a lot of the time, the information
Por
that
ejemplo,
scientists
muchas
think that
veces
industry
la
folks want to know
información,
is not
ellos
actually what they
piensan
need.
que no es
So if you're
necesariamente lo
producing
que
all this
tienen.
data
Entonces, si se producen
that
todos estos
isn't
datos
practical
que
for
no son prácticos
the industries that are
para
important in
las
your
industrias
region,
que son
you're
importantes en la
not going to
región,
have a lot of
usted
success
no
by
va a
saying,
tener
look, I made
mucho
this for you.
éxito
And they're like,
diciendo,
I
bueno,
don't
hice
need
eso
that.
para usted, eso no lo
So
necesito.
I think if you're going
Entonces, yo
to
creo que
bring
si usted
in
va a traer
these conversations,
estas conversaciones,
make
si
sure
va a
that
tener
it
estas
is
conversaciones,
a
hay que
two-way street.
asegurarse que sea una vía en doble
Yeah, I guess I
sentido.
wonder what's the format. I mean, maybe there's
Me
no good
pregunto
answer,
cuál es el
but what is
formato,
that
a lo
street?
mejor no hay una
In
sola
the practical
respuesta,
sense, the
pero
way
cuál es
that
la
the
vía.
cans work
En el
is
sentido
they
práctico,
have
como
regular meetings,
trabaja,
but
esto
they
es que
also work by having
tienen
seminars
reuniones y
and
seminarios con
that they're
cierta
webinars, so that
frecuencia
reduces
y son
costs quite a lot
webinars
to
y
not
esto
have to meet
reduce
in
mucho los
person.
costos para que no tengan que
And the
reunirse
seminars are not just scientists talking to
personalmente
the
y
industry
los
people who are online,
seminarios no son
it's the other
solamente
way
los
around as
científicos
well,
hablando con los
so that they
industriales,
can take
también
turns
es
saying
los
this is what we
industriales
see
hablando con
as
los
the priority,
científicos
this
y
is what we
dicen, bueno,
need, this
esta
is
es,
what the gaps
esto
are.
es lo que vemos como
And
prioridad,
the OA Info
estos son
Exchange
los
was started by the
vacíos.
NECAN
Sí,
as an
y
example
comenzamos
because
con
they
el
really
NECAN
saw
como ejemplo, porque ellos
the value. I want to
realmente
offer a
vieron,
couple of
esto.
minutes in case there are
Bueno,
questions
quiero
from the
saber
audience
si
around
tienen
this
alguna
regional coordination
pregunta
effort. So
alrededor
I'll actually
de estos
walk around with
esfuerzos
the
regionales de
microphone. Does anybody have
coordinación.
any questions for our
¿Alguien
panelists?
tiene alguna pregunta para alguno de los miembros del panel?
Yes, I have a question with respect to
Tengo una pregunta con relación
regional hub.
a los hubs regionales.
I think language has
Yo
resulted
creo
in some
que
amount of
el
division between the
lenguaje,
Spanish-speaking
perdón, el
countries
idioma
and
ha
the
sido como una
English-speaking
barrera
countries, not to mention the French and the Dutch.
entre los países de
And
habla
what we have is
hispana,
that when we
los
speak about
países
Latin
de habla
America and
inglesa,
the
y
Caribbean,
olvidémonos
it
de
usually
los de
does
habla
not include
de los
or is not
alemanes
inclusive of
o
English-speaking
franceses.
And I think that
Entonces
we
yo
have a
pienso que
challenge
nosotros
because
tenemos
how our
un
societies have
desafío
developed in that we
porque
haven't developed
las
this dual
sociedades
way of doing
a veces
things,
no se
which puts us, I
desarrollan
think,
en
at a
estos
disadvantage because
en
it's
dos
not very easy
idiomas
for us
y es
to
una
communicate
desventaja. A veces no es
with the
fácil para
Spanish-speaking
nosotros
countries,
comunicarnos
and
con
we
los
have to,
países
and we appreciate it, we have to
hispánicos
depend on
y
the
nosotros
fact that most
tenemos
of the
que
Spanish-speaking
depender
countries, the
del
persons can
hecho
speak English
de que la
to
mayoría de
assist in that
los
communication. And one of
países
the
de habla
discussions
hispana a
that
lo
we have been
mejor
having here
algunos
of us
pueden
that
hablar
are the
inglés y pueden
English-speaking
ayudar en la
Caribbean
comunicación,
countries is
digamos,
if maybe we
en
don't need
las islas del Caribe
a
de habla inglesa.
sub-hub
A lo mejor
to sort of
necesitamos un sub-hub
articulate what
para
our issues are,
articular
'cause
cuáles
most of
son
us are
nuestros
small
problemas,
islands.
nuestros
We,
temas, porque somos
we're not large
pequeños
countries.
estados
We don't
insulares,
border on
no somos
anybody
países
else.
grandes, no tenemos
We,
fronteras
maybe
con
some of
otros
us have
países
narrow reefs,
y a lo
we
mejor
have small
algunos de
EEZs and so on,
nosotros
so that we
tenemos,
can
digamos,
probably
unos
articulate
arrecifes
more of the
estrechos
issues
y a lo mejor podemos
that we
articular
have
los
that are
temas, los
different and
problemas que
separate from
tenemos
the
que
sort of
son
continental and
independientes
Central America, South America,
de
Latin
los
countries. I know you have
temas
Puerto
que se
Rico and
tienen
Dominican
en América
Republic
del
that
Sur,
are
en América Latina. Bueno,
islands,
sé que
but
ustedes tienen
for
a
the
República
English-speaking, I think
Dominicana y
sometimes
Puerto
we kind
Rico
of
que
feel
son islas. Pero
not
para
only
los de
left
habla
out,
inglesa,
I
no es
don't
que
wanna
nos
put the onus
sentamos
on, that way, but
fuera del
find it
grupo,
difficult to get in,
pero a
let's put it
veces
that way.
sí encontramos alguna dificultad
Indeed.
sintiéndonos como parte del grupo.
This is a fact.
Sí, ese
We
es un
have
hecho.
a very rich
Tenemos,
this part of the planet from the point of view human
o sea,
presence is really rich. We have the different
tenemos muchas
history of how we have been developing
diferencias,
our countries
en la
because of
manera como
the way
hemos
how that was
desarrollado nuestros
colonized
países, por la manera como
the
fueron
Americas was
colonizados
colonized. So, but
o cómo se colonizaron a los
and
países
we at IOC
de
and
América.
we recognize and all
Nosotros
is our work
reconocemos
in all the UN
y es
bodies
parte
to
de
recognize, and we are
parte de nuestro trabajo en las
we need to
Naciones
address
Unidas,
the difference in
reconocer
language,
esto y tenemos que
because
solucionar las
but
diferencias
that
y
is one of the paradoxes here.
idiomáticas. Esta es una de las
Most of the
paradojas aquí.
information here
Gran
we found
parte
is in
de
English.
la
and
información
we are
que se
discussing
encuentra
science,
aquí
etc.
es en
You have a quite
inglés.
good literature
Se tiene
access,
una
etc.
gran
in English.
cantidad de acceso a literatura en
However,
inglés,
the
a
great
trabajos
majority
en
of countries
inglés.
who has, from
Sin
the point of
embargo,
view of development, I was mentioning
la
that
mayoría
we
de
have
los países en
about
vías de
780 programs in
desarrollo,
ocean
o sea,
science,
hemos
and only
desarrollado una
5
gran
countries they
cantidad
have
de
70%
programas
of those
en
programs.
ciencias del
are
océano
offered.
y solamente un pequeño porcentaje
What is
tiene
happening is that,
programas en esto. Lo
in
que está
addition to
ocurriendo
the
es
difference
que
in
además
languages,
de las
also
diferencias
we need to
en
recognize
idiomas,
that
tenemos
most
que
of the island
reconocer que
states,
la mayoría
that
de
we
los
call
estados
wrongly
insulares,
island developing states
que son
or small
estados
developing states when they are
insulares
large
en
maritime
desarrollo,
states. Yeah?
o sea, y
This is the
tenemos
first
también los
ma-
grandes
major
estados
difference.
marítimos, esa es
What
como la
is
gran
also
diferencia.
the reason why you are struggling very much
La razón
is
por la cual
because
están
of the size
luchando
of the
es por el
country.
tamaño del país.
You have one fisheries officer
O
who is
sea,
also happens to be the
O sea,
environmental
se
officer
tiene,
who is
digamos,
also
un
representing you at the
funcionario de
Cartagena
pesca,
Convention.
que también es el
Yeah?
funcionario
So
ambiental,
you,
el que
you
representa
have
al
a
país en la
major
Convención de
human
Cartagena.
resources
O sea que ustedes tienen
capacity challenge.
un desafío
So
porque
what,
tienen
how we have been
limitado
addressing in IOC?
recurso humano. ¿Cómo,
First of all is
cómo
that
hemos podido
we
solucionar
have
esto en la
established the
COI?
so-called Ocean
Hemos
Teacher Global
establecido
Academy.
el
of
Global
IOC.
Ocean Teacher
And
Academy, una
INVEMAR
academia
is,
de la COI.
is one of the
INVEMAR
hubs
es
for
uno de
Latin
los
America and
hubs
the
para
Caribbean.
América Latina y para
And
el Caribe.
what we do is
Y lo que nosotros
develop
hacemos
all the training
es que
in the both
desarrollamos
languages. We
toda
have
la
guidelines
capacitación en ambos
even in
idiomas,
4 languages,
tenemos
etc.
guías inclusive
All
en
the
4
IOC
idiomas.
languages. And this is one of the ways. But we need to recognize that this is a major challenge. Not to speak about, even if we address the French, our French, Haiti, and other French-speaking population inside Caribe and in Latin America and the Caribbean. So this is a major challenge. How we can improve even that and help countries to enhance their science capacity is via that networking. So and tailor most of the a good number of trainees of training easily. So sometimes people who do speak Spanish, they might not necessarily complain, but notice that even though 10 of the participants are from 15 or 12 are Spanish-speaking persons, the training is run in English. So that is also a matter of combining the efforts, and there is a need for, and I will also encourage our fellows from everywhere else, English-speaking, Spanish-speaking, to learn the other language. We help a lot. And I volunteer to help anybody if you are willing to learn Russian or French. Yeah, but this is the way to go. We need to network and use cooperate among ourselves in order to go through the hard.
I think that is a really good point about limited capacity. We've worked in the Pacific Islands, including places where to get there you take a 36-hour boat that goes once a week from an island, and that's the only way to get there, right? And the person that we trained serves every role possible in the Ministry of Environment. And so one of the things that we talked about in those cases is not everybody has to do everything. And what can we do? So bottle sampling, for example, as a key strategy. You know, sometimes you just won't have enough people to do all of the things that we're talking about. And that's okay. And that's where partnerships come in, and finding a regional institution that can do some of the analysis for you, that can assist with the modeling, where you might be able to run some of those biological experiments on species that you care about, because maybe you just only have 2 staff people who have to do all the water quality monitoring for the entire island, and all of this and all of that, and it's just too much to ask of somebody. So I also think in the Pacific Islands, those that we've worked with there, and really any small island or large ocean state faces similar challenges in that regard.
Just quickly as well, again on this, do we create a subgroup, or do you want to create? That's really then up for the individual countries and to find its partners, and if there is a willingness and the need identified to do something.
Y habría que identificar la necesidad de hacer algo. Esos hubs están compuestos por una masa de científicos para crear algo, y pues vienen de diferentes organizaciones. Y como usted dijo, hay que hacer un esfuerzo para aprender, como ha dicho César, aprender el idioma de la otra persona. Durante los últimos 7 a 10 años, cuando llego a un país, tengo que hacer el esfuerzo de aprender el idioma. Pero lo importante sí es tener el hub.
And I think it's really here also to say that you really don't have to do everything, because
y realmente no tienen que hacer todo.
You have in theory the equipment
en teoría tienen digamos el equipo para las mediciones de pH o TIC, pero a lo mejor no lo está haciendo bien, porque solamente sacan muestras cada 2 meses, así que a lo mejor es asociarse, tener un hub para que el instrumento sea utilizado, para que funcione adecuadamente y así se pueden obtener los resultados adecuados, y siempre hay recursos financieros, técnicos y humanos limitados para poder tener esas alianzas entre instituciones, países y en la región.
I just like to make two suggestions.
Yo quiero hacer dos sugerencias.
One, forget the policymaker involved. You have to treat it as an economical value.
Hay que tratar a los
My next
legisladores como un
suggestion
valor
is,
económico.
as scientists, we only
Como científicos,
train few. Why don't
que-
train to citizen scientists?
hay que entrenar
train the locals, they will get more
hay que
data,
entrenar
more
a los
everything.
locales para poder obtener más
That
datos.
way,
De esa
we will
manera,
have more people doing maybe
tenemos,
pH, more
más,
people doing
personas que
blue
miden
carbon,
el pH,
just that.
hacen lo del carbono azul.
That's a very good point. I think
Sí,
there's a
ese es
couple
un
really
punto
good
muy
examples
interesante.
happening
Yo
right
creo que
now.
hay unos
New
buenos
Zealand and
ejemplos que se
Alaska
están
are two
dando
places I
ahora.
think of
Nueva
immediately that
Zelanda
are
y
doing really
Alaska
good
son
citizen
dos
science
sitios,
work.
que están haciendo
And so they
un
have
buen
whole models. In
trabajo
fact, the one in
científico, tienen
Alaska, well, both of them
modelos, el de-
have like
el de
all of these
Alaska
tools that
tiene
they've made.
todas
In
estas
Alaska, they send beer bottles
herramientas.
out.
En
They call them
Alaska
action packers.
muestran,
They send them to all these remote native
envían
communities and they
botellas de
collect water and then they use a
cerveza
percolator
a todos
to
estos
run the
sitios
samples.
y utilizan,
So there's some really cool
como
examples of things already going on that we can
utilizan los
model after.
coladores y este tipo
I
de
want to
cosas
allow our
para
panelists
obtener
to
las
respond to
muestras.
that question, but I also want to
Bueno,
say
quiero que los
that the happy
panelistas
hour we're having,
respondan
the
a
whole
esto, y
point
también
is to
quiero
get to
decir
know
que la
each other
idea
more
del happy
and talk
hour
about some of these
es que se
things. There'll be
conozcan y
people's
hablen
posters up,
sobre
so you'll get to
estas cosas
see
y
what
van a
people
ver
are
los
doing
posters de
already
las
in the
personas
region.
para que ustedes sepan
And
lo
if
que
you
la
didn't
gente
bring a
está haciendo
poster,
en la
please also
región.
share what you're doing or
Y
what
si
you
tra-
want
y
to
si
do.
no trajeron un
There'll be
póster,
a poster on
compartan lo que
Lauca so
están
you can see
haciendo.
more about it.
van
And then
a-
one final thing,
Bueno, y
so
un
that there's
punto
no
final
confusion, the
para
dinner
que
is
no haya
still on
confusión.
Wednesday.
La
So
comida
the
sí
field
sigue
trip and the
siendo el
lab timer
miércoles.
switched, but the dinner
O
is
sea, sí
still on Wednesday.
cambiamos,
But I want to give you a chance
el
to
field
respond if you
trip.
wanted to.
Bueno, si quieren responder.
I will, following up on the discussion, also
Bueno,
what
con relación a
is
esta
important concerning
discusión, lo que
languages
es importante
and the language in
cuanto
general
a
is
los
that
idiomas
we have in the
es que
region a
nosotros
series
en la
of,
región
of sub-regional
una
organizations.
serie de organizaciones
For instance,
subregionales.
also one of the ways to
Una
improve
de las
the
maneras
capacity
como
by
podemos
those
mejorar la
sub-regions is
capacidad en
we are
esas
partnering, for instance, with
subregiones
CARICOM.
es que, por ejemplo,
And
trabajamos
within
con CARICOM
we are addressing directly
y
the
en
issues that
CARICOM
the CARICOM
estamos
countries that you have,
resolviendo
and if
directamente
there
los
is any
problemas
training
que
or
tienen los
whatever,
países de
that
CARICOM y si hay una
is done in
capacitación
English directly.
se hace
That will improve.
directamente
Also,
en inglés.
other sub-regional
Y eso
organization
también
that is quite also
permite que
interesting
otras
is
organizaciones
OECS.
subregionales
With them also, and this is
participen,
also a way to improve the quality of those
y esto
trainers
también ayuda a
and have
mejorar
access
la
to the
calidad de los
top-notch science
entrenadores y así tienen
for the different
acceso a los mejores
groups that are
científicos
by
para
somehow
los distintos
hampered because of
grupos
the language
que a
barrier.
veces se ven afectados por las
So I want to
barreras
say thank
del
you so
idioma.
much to our
Bueno,
panelists.
muchas
and we're gonna
gracias a
continue our
nuestros panelistas y
conversation
vamos a
over
continuar nuestra
snacks
conversación
and drinks.
allí
please
durante
enjoy.
el cóctel.